Hi there, welcome to today's painting tutorial. Today we are going to paint a chocolate cupcake with acrylic paints. So let's get started. I'm going to start with a size 3 flat brush. And if you want to paint along with me, grab the sketch in the description below. I'm going to start with this dark brown color. And then let's go around this section here at the top. And then I'm going to take a lighter brown, put that in the center. And then we'll go to this next section. So I'm putting a dark brown and then some light brown. And then let's mix up a beige color. So I'm going to take some of this orange and mix it with a little bit of white. And then let's put that color in the center. Then I'm going to go back to this dark brown, bring that around this next section. And then we'll take the chocolatey brown. And then I'm going to do this section here with the dark brown and then the light brown. And then this section, and I'm using the edge of the brush to get those thinner lines, and then the light brown. And while that's still wet, let's take a size 1 dome brush, take a little bit of white paint, and see if we can start putting in some highlights. So in the center of that frosting, just going to put these little white marks. Okay, and then we're going to keep going. So take the dark brown, bring that around the next few sections. And again, you can use that sketch to help you know where to put these marks. So after the dark brown, we'll put in the lighter brown. And you can do that while the paint is still wet. So you can get a nice blended effect. And you can allow those paints to mix together. Okay, we just want that nice contrast. Okay, while that paint is still wet, I'm going to take some of this light beige color that we mixed up, bring some of that into the frosting as a highlight. Again, doing that while the paint is still wet. Okay, so let's do the next section. You can see a pattern forming here. So I'm going to take that dark brown and go around the outside edges of that frosting. Okay, we have larger sections here. And then we'll take the light brown and go in the center. All right, in the center, try to cover up all the whites of the paper. Again, we have some of that wet paint blending. I do have a little bit of slow drying medium in here. That's helping the paint to just blend a little bit more. Okay, so while that's still wet, we'll take this almost beige color with a soft blending dome brush. Just put a few little marks in the center. It's going to give a three-dimensional look. Okay, and then we'll keep going. So back to that flat brush. And we have this piece of frosting. And then this piece is part of the cake. So I'm going to go down with this dark brown and make sort of a shadow underneath the frosting. Okay, and then we'll pick up the light brown, bring it in here. Okay, and then we'll take this nice orangey highlight in the dome brush, and again, just put some highlights in there. Okay. All right, so that's the frosting. And if you want, you can take a 0 round brush and a little bit of white paint. While some of that paint is still wet, you could go back and just add a few more highlights into the frosting. Just bring those highlights out, but try not to overdo it. Okay, so let's go down. Let's try using the dome brush for this. So I'm going to take that dark brown. And then I didn't make the ridge of the cupcake. So I'm going to do that now. Just make a few little circular shapes here, just little curves. Okay, and then I'm going to take the lighter brown, put that in the center. Okay, that's the cake area, and you probably want to let that dry before we go back and add texture. Let's take a little bit of this bluish gray. Actually put a little bit of that into this right side and the left, just places where there's a little bit of shadow. Okay, so now let's work on this area here. I'm going to use the flat brush, and let's start with this dark brown color. And I want to create these lines. Okay, so these are going to be the little lines for the cupcake holder. Just use the edge of the brush. Try to space them fairly evenly. Okay, and then you can also take the dark brown and go along the bottom. See if you can get a nice smooth edge. You might have to turn the paper to get that crisp edge. It's a little tricky to do it from this angle. Okay, so then I'm going to take some of this peachy color and I'm going to put some of that in between these lines. It's a little bit lighter on the left side. And then it's a little darker on the right. So I'm going to use that burnt sienna color. Just making nice little strokes here. And then I'm going to pick up this purple color. This is a nice purpley gray. So let's start putting that in. You can go on top of the other paint that you have. Let's bring it down here along the bottom, then along this edge. Just try to fill this in. You can keep your paint strokes nice and loose here. Doesn't have to be precise. And that darker color is going to show through. And then I'm going to take some of this bluish gray and let's bring that up. Bringing that up along this top edge and just brushing it in. Again, we're using that side of the brush. Just trying to cover up all the whites of the paper here. Okay, and then you can go back to some of that dark brown and try to bring back some of these lines, these shadows. The paint is wet, so it's blending nicely. I'm just using that edge of the brush, so it's doing the work for me. Okay, so while that's still wet, now we're going to pick up some white. And then just with the edge of the brush, trying to go in between the dark lines. Might need a little bit more paint. You can get painterly here and try to put these nice white lines right in between. Okay, and they're mostly here in the middle and around the top. Okay, so now I'm gonna switch. Let's try a liner brush. So I have a size 0 liner brush. Let's take some of this white paint and see if we can make almost like a little curved pattern. I'm using this so that I can get a really thin line. But I'm trying to curve the paint to create that little line for the wrapper. Okay. And then you can go back and try to connect some of these lines. So at the bottom of some of the curves, try to connect it down into your other paint, that white highlight that you made. So now let's look at the cake area. I have a 0 bristle brush. Let's try to do some dry brushing. So we can take some white with some of this orangey color. And let's put that in. See if we can create some texture. I'm going to use some burnt sienna. And add some of that texture as well. Okay, try not to make it too uniform. Try not to overdo it. So you may have to go back with some of your darks if you put a little bit too much light in there. Okay, so now let's look at the raspberry at the top. I'm going to take the 0 round brush, and we have a little bit of red here. This is a brilliant red. Let's mix it with some of this dark brown or burnt umber. And then I just want to go around the bottom and create these little, I'm going to take more brown because I want that to be a little darker. So I'm just making these little circles to create each individual berry. And I'm thinking about the shadows and where those are. I'm going to take some burnt sienna. Let's actually take some of this orange color. I'm going to put some of that in there to get a nice bright glowing effect. And then let's take some of this bluish gray and put that on the right side. It's going to create a little bit of a shadow for some of these berries. Then up at the top, we'll do a straight red. Trying to cover up all the whites of the paper. And then I'm going to take some white paint. Let's use that white paint to just put a few little dots for some highlights. In the center of some of those little berries. I might come back with some of the dark paint and create more shadow where I need it, just to have a little more contrast. Okay, and if those highlights are too bright, you can always go back with a little bit of red and just bring them down. I can take that blue, put some shadow highlights. Okay, so you can step back and look at your work. And let's add a few more highlights. I'm going to take that dome brush, which will allow us to get some softer highlights. Let's take a little bit of white. And then come back to brush a few little highlights here. Make it a little bit thicker in some of these areas. Okay, and we will call this demonstration complete. Thank you so much for painting along with me. Like and subscribe for more painting tutorials. Check out my free guide in the description below if you want to go even deeper into acrylic painting, and we will see you in the next video. Bye!